أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على النبي الكريم محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي رب زدني علما أما بعد, respected brothers, sisters, listeners, viewers, Alhamdulillah, we are today on our 10th lesson of the Fiqh series of the Fiqh lessons, and Alhamdulillah, over the past 9 lessons we've managed to cover in somewhat a summary the introduction to Fiqh, and then we spoke about the because of course the target is to cover the 5 pillars of Islam, which are made up by the Shahada, the Salah, the Sawm, the Hajj and the Zakah. And we spoke about the Shahada itself, or the articles of our faith, in sort of a brief understanding, not going into too much detail. And then we started speaking about the Tahara and the ways of purification, wudu, and we spoke about ghusl, and then we spoke about najasa as well. And we spoke about the different forms of impurity and how to cleanse oneself from those. And all of those lessons have been recorded, uploaded onto YouTube for those brothers and sisters who may want to refer to them, inshallah. Today, inshallah, in our 10th lesson, on page number 69 of the translation of Maraq al-Sa'adat, Ascent to Felicity, we are starting the bab, or the chapter of prayer, Salah, the ritual prayer, the Salat itself. And the Mu'allif and the translator, they say, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, prayer times. The times of the prescribed prayers are 5. So basically, there are 5 daily prayers. The time of Fajr, Subh, is from the entrance of true dawn until right before sunrise. The time of Fajr is from Subh al-Sadiq, which is the true dawn, and it lasts up until just before sunrise. True dawn, what is the true dawn? We spoke a bit last week and we said that the true dawn, Subh al-Sadiq, on footnote number 181, it says true dawn refers to the horizontal white light that spreads across the horizon, as opposed to false dawn, which is the vertical light that appears earlier and is followed by darkness. So about 15 minutes before the Subh al-Sadiq, there is something called the false dawn, which is basically not a horizontal white light, rather it's a vertical white light. Vertical white light, or the false dawn, is not the beginning of Fajr, it is still before the Fajr. As for the horizontal white light, which is the Subh al-Sadiq, is the demarcation or the marking point of the beginning of the Fajr, the Waqt al-Fajr. From then on, you can pray your Fajr Sunnah and you can pray your Fajr Farad all the way up until just before sunrise. Sunrise refers to the moment any part of the sun appears on the horizon. So before that, even though it may seem to be bright, it doesn't mean that the sun has yet risen, rather it means that it's close to rising, and therefore sunrise time may not have had come yet. So for example, if nowadays sunrise around, I think 7:44 or 7:45, from about 7:30, 7:20 starts to get a bit bright. You can still see someone without the street lights, but that doesn't mean the sun has risen. It means that it's close to rising. So because the sun is so powerful, you can still see some of it's like a car before it goes around a bend, before it comes around, we can still see some brightness, but the car hasn't actually turned into the road yet. So in a similar way, before the sunrise, you can still see some light, but the sunrise itself is the moment some of the sun, even if it's a millimeter of it, appears on the horizon, and that's the cutoff point, that's the sunrise itself. On the contrary, the sunrise is not as soon as a part of the sun disappears. It's when the whole of the sun disappears. So on the sunrise is considered to be the moment some of it appears, and the sunset is considered when the whole of the sun disappears. So we can't say sunset as soon as some of the sun has disappeared and it's still setting. And that's even in sort of general understanding in English, we say sunset after the sun has completely set. So that's the time of Fajr. And in footnote number 182, the author speaks and he says, that is, as in sunrise is the start of the sunrise, when the top of the disk first emerges above the horizon. And we spoke a little bit about the 18-degree and the 12-degree discussion last week, and we said that when it comes to Ramadan, especially in Western countries, especially in UK and neighboring countries, we always hear this discussion and disagreement about should we stop our suhoor at 1:30 or should we carry on up until 2:45? And we hear that the terminology or the technical terms like 12 degree, 15 degree, and 17 degree and 18 degree. And even though the Shaykh here says that 18 degree is the safer, and we agree it is the safer opinion. What does 18 degree first of all mean? We said last week that the sun 18 degree before its rise. So 18 degrees before its sunrise itself, that's what we're talking about. So obviously we know that the whole circle is 360 degree. We call it a 360 degree turn if it goes around the entire circle, and it's 90 if it's quarter, 120 if it's half, and so on and so forth. So now he's saying that the 18 degree opinion is safer, and we agree, it is safer. But then we do go and start our fast at around 2:45 in Ramadan or later, and we follow the easier opinion. We follow the opinion that allows more time for us to take our suhoor and more time for our taraweeh and for our tahajjud and so on and so forth. Why do we do that? Why do we go for the easier opinion and not for the safer opinion? Well, we should first of all remember very, very clearly that taking ease or the easier opinion is not something that's out of Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, مَا جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. He has not made for you in your religion anything that's overly burdensome, something that's extremely difficult. لَا يُكَلِّفُ اللَّهُ نَفْسًا إِلَّا وُسْعَهَا. Allah does not require you to do something that's extremely difficult. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the hadith is very known and famous that ما خير النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بين أمرين إلا اختار أيسرهما, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was not given the option between two things except that for the fact that he chose the easier one. So now, just ease itself is not something outside of Islam. So if someone is generally inclining towards ease within the boundaries of Sharia, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's doing something un-Islamic. But the condition is that that ease has to be based on evidence. Okay, so I can't say it's easier for me not to pray, because that's not based on evidence. Evidence says that you should pray. وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ, so on and so forth. So now, because in Ramadan we go for the easier opinion, what's the reason? Because we spoke last week and we said that when it came to khuf, wiping over cotton socks and leather socks, we said that we should go for the safer opinion, which is to generally prefer wiping over leather socks. But if you were put in a situation of extreme difficulty where you have already worn your thin cotton socks. Now obviously there are ulama that will say cotton socks, thin cotton socks, there is an opinion out there, take it, no problem. And I am no one to obstruct or to say no. Okay? But what I'm saying to you is, as far as we understand, when it comes to ibadat, especially salah and sawm and hajj and zakat, the main 5 pillars of your ibadat, we should always try to be on the safer side of things. But then, Shaykh, you're contradicting yourself. You said to me, be on the safer side when it came to cotton socks and leather socks. Why are you saying to me to go for the easier opinion here when it comes to Ramadan time? Well, to be honest, there are ulama, Hanafi ulama, and if you go to masajid across London or UK, you find that a lot of masajid, their timetable says that the suhoor ends at the 18 degree timetable, so a lot earlier, an hour earlier, to be on the safer side. But remember this, that when something results in extreme difficulty, when an opinion results or is a reason for extreme difficulty, even within the school of law, even within the Hanafi madhab, even within general madhahib themselves, even according to scholars, when something results in extreme difficulty, you are allowed to take the easier opinion. And we said, remember when we were speaking about khuf, we said that if, say for example, you are already wearing the cotton socks, even if you're going generally for the safer opinion, you don't generally wipe over thin cotton socks, but if you're in a very difficult situation, and in that case you thought, let me go for the easier opinion, there is no harm in you. You are still, you're not doing anything wrong. Now in Ramadan, if someone delays or goes for the safer opinion, he is losing like more than an hour. The effect of it is quite severe in Ramadan. I mean, it can lead to extreme and severe difficulty for a lot of us. If you are someone, mashallah, and I think all of us, if you wanted to go for the safer, maybe we could. If you are someone that prefers to be safe, even when it comes to that timing, then that's good for you, mashallah. That's good. Ihtiyat is better, to be on the safer side, you know. But if generally we go with the masses or the general famous opinion, which is the timetable that we follow in Darul Ummah or other masajid, that it's basically a bit later, the 18th degree, or the 12th degree, or the later opinion, then because that would result in extreme difficulty if you were to follow the earlier time, it is an extreme difficulty because the day is very long as it is. And we have very limited time for qiyam and for suhoor and so on and so forth. And a lot of brothers go to work and the effects are very huge. And for that reason, even if we were to say let's go for the easier opinion here, we wouldn't be doing something completely blasphemous or outside the legal system. Does that make sense? Are there any questions so far? Because this is something that I want to sort of speak in detail and understand. Because you might say to me, hold on, you're speaking willy-nilly. One moment you're saying go for the safer, and the other you're going for. So now let's take another example. We'll come to it anyway, inshallah. In the Hanafi or the Imam Abu Hanifa's or the general Hanafi legal system, and there's something that we need to understand a bit more, since this lesson is probably becoming maybe a bit more known. I don't know, but I hope so. It is that when I say the school of Imam Abu Hanifa or the Hanafi legal system, I am not, because you might say to me, why are you following an individual? And you're not allowed to follow any individual except for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that's a very, very profound statement, that there is no ma'soom except for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Anbiya, and obviously our Rasul is Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So why are we following one man, Abu Hanifa or Imam Shafi'i or Imam Malik? Why are we following individual people on a whole Islamic legal system? What's your reason? The answer to that is, when you go to the school of thought, it's called a school of law, a school of thought. So even though it might be referred to as the school of law of so-and-so, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of scholars who have come into these legal systems and spoken, ridiculed, critiqued and criticized and debated each and every single issue before it became written in the fatwa or the known rulings that are out there. So it's not following one person, no, not at all. There are opinions of the Imam himself in the madhab which are refuted and rejected and not accepted in the school. And therefore the fatwa is not on that opinion. Does that make sense? So we are not following one person, we are following a school of thought, and that's no problem whatsoever, inshallah. There is no harm or sin in that, to follow a school, a group of scholars. Okay? To follow a group of scholars, there's no harm in that. To follow one person, you might ask him questions, but I've just explained to you what the case actually is. That's just something to clarify, yeah? There was another example that I was going to give you of extreme difficulty. And we'll come to that inshallah, and maybe I'm speaking to your head, but I can see everyone's mashallah very understanding here. In our Hanafi legal system, we say that if you are traveling, al-jam'u bayna as-salatayn, or to join between two prayers, other madhahib will allow you that you can join between Asr and Dhuhr at the time of Dhuhr when you're traveling, and you can join between Maghrib and Isha at the time of Isha at Isha time. This is more or less all the other madhahib, right? In the Hanafi school of law, we say no. You need to, even if you're traveling, you need to pray every single prayer at its time, unless and except if it's one condition. If it's on the day of Arafah. On the day of Arafah, we say that we pray Asr and Dhuhr together in Arafah at Dhuhr time, and Maghrib and Isha together at Isha time in Muzdalifah. It's just one exception. Why? Because the hadith of that is very, very, very famous. Why do we say, why are we so strict? And we don't want to go into that whole mas'ala just yet. But generally, because in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ كَانَتْ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ كِتَابًا مَوْقُوتًا, that every single prayer has a fixed time. It's Quran. It's mutawatir. The evidence of it is clear cut. There is nothing to erase it or change it unless the ayah becomes mansukh later, and that has to be pronounced, of course, and known. The ayah is there. For me to come and change that ruling, I need something as strong. Does that make sense? I need another ayah to say, you know what, you can change the time if you're traveling. That isn't there. There isn't another ayah that says if you're traveling, pray or change the time of the prayer. There isn't another ayah. So we refer to who? The ahadith. When it comes to ahadith, there's strong and there's mashhur, there's mutawatir, there's mashhur, and then there's different categories of hadith. As far as the Hanafi legal system is concerned, if I want to change an ayah in the Quran or the ruling of an ayah, then it has to be another ayah or something else that's mashhur, a hadith that's known, famous. The hadith of Yawm Arafah, is it famous or not famous? It's very, very famous. Because it was in Arafah and there were thousands of Hujjaj with the Prophet ﷺ. They all, or many of them, narrated that incident, and therefore the the authenticity of the hadith, there is no doubt in it. As for, are you allowed to mix between two prayers when you're traveling generally, those ahadith are not, as far as the Hanafi legal system is concerned, haven't reached that level of fame, because travels and journeys of the Prophet ﷺ were not necessarily in major groups. There might have been 1, 2, 3, 4 people narrating it, or 1 or 2 or 3 narrations about it. And so, therefore, the Hanafi scholars say to you, first of all, that we can't change that ayah until we have something very famous. And we find, as far as the Hanafi legal system is concerned, that that case is only, or that condition is only fulfilled in Arafah. Now, the reason why I'm saying this to you is even within the Hanafi legal system, and you can refer to some of our big books if you're concerned, if there is an extreme case of difficulty, okay, then even then, if there is an extreme case of difficulty, okay, then for you to join the prayers in traveling is okay as well. Khalas? That's if it's an extreme case of difficulty. Now that needs to be verified by yourself, and of course you have to have a certain amount of knowledge to verify that information by yourself. But what I'm trying to say is extreme difficulty is considered within the legal systems throughout. Khalas? So now I think we've covered Fajr quite a bit in detail, but it's interesting sometimes to know the background story. The Fajr time is from Subh al-Sadiq up until just before sunrise. The time of Dhuhr is from immediately after. And today, to be honest, I thought let's just clarify this a bit more, because I don't want no one saying that this guy, you know.
Question. How do you define extreme case of difficulty in different situations?
So you can say, for example, it's something that affects you, you could say significantly. Say for example, like if you're scared of enemies and upon your life, and you know, something that's going to make your life really quite difficult, and you can understand if something's going to make your life really quite difficult, especially on an individual level as well, you can understand that. So if, say for example, you think for me to right now, say for example cotton socks, yeah, for me to right now take my cotton socks off and do wudu, it would, like, the example is like if you're like I gave to you the example when I deemed myself, like for me I thought that's okay. I'll give it my personal experience, yeah. So I was in that hotel in Mayfair, had the MCB event going on, and I had only a few minutes left. For me to take my socks off, my normal socks off, for me to do wudu would require that I need to take all of my gown off and everything, okay, hang it up somewhere, and it's a hotel where there's a lot of non-Muslims coming in. And for you to wash your feet on the sink in a non-Muslim environment, we spoke about this before as well, it's already considered a bit rude. So that's one fact, the fact that there's the environment is not so suitable, first of all. Number two, I had limited time until Maghrib time came in. Okay? And so if I wanted to take my socks off and do wudu and dry myself and so on and so forth, I would have been extremely exerted. I would have probably been like exhausted completely. And also I may have missed the time. Now this, for me was an extreme case of difficulty. If you're scared of an enemy attack, that's an extreme case of difficulty. And you know, when we spoke about joining between two prayers and traveling, if say for example you fear that if you pray each individual prayer in their own time, then you might be exposed to enemy attacks and so on and so forth. So you need to be a bit more careful. And so on and so there are. But generally, when it comes to an extreme case of difficulty, there's that leniency. So a lot of the times we can decide ourselves what's an extreme case of difficulty, but we need to be honest and we need to tell ourselves, am I inclining towards ease, or am I just trying to make my life easier just for the sake of it because I feel like it? So when there is, but of course, if you're not a mufti or if you're not a alim, it's better to always consult someone. Consult another alim and you know, see what they say, and hopefully inshallah they'll give you a nice fatwa or nice opinion that will help you inshallah ta'ala. Okay? But generally that is a good question. You can read up on it more, or maybe we can speak about it a bit more in the future inshallah ta'ala. How do we define extreme difficulty? Khalas, it's quite a detailed or a sensitive question. The time of Dhuhr is from immediately after midday, Zawal. Zawal is when the sun is right above you in the sky and your shadow is right below you. That's called Zawal. Until the time when the shadow of any object is twice its own length. And we're coming to another ikhtilaf now. So from the time just after Zawal up until the length of every object is twice its own length. So for example, this phone. The shadow of it is, if it is the same length as the phone, is probably about this much. For it to be twice as much up to here. So he's saying that when the sun is around here in the sky, he's saying to you that that's when the Dhuhr time finishes. And there is a second opinion within the Hanafi school of law, and is in fact the opinion of all the other madhahib generally, as far as I know. But a large group of scholars, or the majority of the ulama, the Jumhur, will say to you that the Zuhr time finishes when the shadow of everything becomes 1 time its length. Okay? And that is also the opinion of Imam Muhammad and Abu Yusuf within the Hanafi legal system. Ibn Abidin, when he speaks about this, he lays out both arguments, and he also gives enough strength to... Now, but we still, in our country, subcontinent, even within these masajid, even in Islamic mosque, even in Darul Ummah, we still pray Asr in the second mithil. You know, in the calendar it says mithil 1, mithil 2. Someone asked me the other day, he goes to me, for my whole life, I wanted to ask someone a question. What's mithil 1, what's mithil 2? So I explained to him, and he was a young man, so I had to explain it properly, like, you know, it took a bit of time. But generally, mithil 1 is when the shadow is 1 time its length. And mithil 2 is, mithil means the sameness or similarity of it. So when you say hada mithlu hada, this is like that. So the likeness of the shadow, if it's the same length, is the 1 mithil. If it's twice, then it's 2 mithil. Generally, within the Hanafi, the countries where Hanafi legal system is widespread, be it Pakistan or Bangladesh or parts of India, or India generally, and of course Turkey and all of those countries, we usually pray at the second mithil. Now, we said to you that both the opinions are quite strong, and we follow the safer. But to be honest, this is something I'll tell you, yeah? Or other ulama have said this as well, obviously, I'm only saying, quoting from them. If you want to be someone on the safer side, then pray your dhuhr before first mithil. Because there is no ikhtilaf that dhuhr time lasts up until first mithil. And if you want to be also on the safer side, then pray your asr on the second mithil. Because there is no ikhtilaf that asr time is present at that time. Meaning, to run away and to avoid ikhtilaf is also something light. One of my personal Sheikh Usama Abdul Azim, Hafidhahullah of Egypt, he is one of the great scholars of Egypt at the moment. An extremely pious individual. He's someone that we take inspiration from, and not to speak about individuals too much, rather about knowledge. But sometimes we need to, you know, for example, me thinking of him makes me a better person, honestly. He's someone that reads 10 ajza of the Quran in his salawat, his fara'id salawat every day. That's something significant. And Nawafil is just consistent. And he's just someone, subhanAllah, if you look at him, you can see, okay, that's someone that loves Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His opinion and what he does in his own masjid. His masjid is where? It's in Imam al-Shafi'i's area. There's an area in Cairo, it's called Fingi. It's called Imam al-Shafi'i. The area is called Imam al-Shafi'i. Right? His masjid is in that area. It's in Aqsa Khana, right next to it. So, all of the masajid around him, they pray Asr in the first mithil. And according to the Wizarat al-Awqaf, or the religious ministry of Cairo, the adhan goes across the country on the first mithil, as in, you know, according to first mithil basically, right? But in his masjid, the adhan, even though it might go with the rest of the masajid, the salah itself is at the beginning of the second mithil. Because him as a Shafi'i, he's a Shafi'i. And he's a Shafi'i usuli, he's a scholar of the principles of the Shafi'i ruling system, of the legal system, right? He prefers to stay safe and prays his asr on the second mithil. Okay, so that means something, that him being such a great alim thinks it's safer for you to. So based on his activity and from what we've seen from other ulama and likes of him, is that pray your dhuhr, if you want to be really on the safe side, if you really care about safety of your awqat and stuff like that, pray your dhuhr within the first mithil. Okay, and for asr, delay it to the Hanafi time. But of course, if you are praying it at mithil al-awwal, following the other opinion which is mashhur and the opinion of the Jamhur, there is nothing to be said to you. You are maybe stronger, but generally there is nothing to be said, inshallah. So the time of dhuhr is until the length of everything is twice, according to the second opinion, or according to a second opinion equivalent to its own length, excluding the amount of shadow at midday. So everything has a shadow at midday, right? So excluding that little bit, the length of itself. Imam Tahawi, who was a Shafi'i first and then turned Hanafi, preferred the second opinion. Generally, Imam Tahawi is someone that's regarded. So Imam Tahawi, when you speak his name, he means someone that's quite important in the madhab. Which Imam Tahawi preferred the second opinion, which is that of the two companions, Abu Yusuf and Muhammad, who are great companions of Abu Hanifa and some of his greatest students ever. Okay, the time of Asr is from the point on which there is a disagreement until right before sunset. Okay, right before sunset. And on 185 we'll give you a bit of explanation, okay, because this is quite important. 185, that is when the disk of the sun is completely below the horizon. The time of Asr has expired and the time of Maghrib begins. We will come to this anyway, but in case we don't, for those people who may have a question up ahead or in advance, the Asr time starts from when we just said, and it ends when the sun has completely set. However, for you to pray while the sun is setting, as in those 20 minutes in which the beginning of the sun has started to dip, and the sun is dipping until the end of its dipping, 15 to 20 minutes or 12 minutes to 20 minutes, that time it's makruh tahrimi for you to pray. Okay? Even Asr of that day is basically disliked for you to delay your Asr to that time. However, if it's the Asr of that day, I haven't prayed my Asr yet, Maghrib time is coming. What do I have now? I have Fard and Makruh al-Tahrimi. Okay? If Fard and Makruh al-Tahrimi come together, which one is given more importance? The Fard itself. So I complete my Fard, even though I may be in the Makruh al-Tahrimi time, and I may be sinful if I was negligent or made that time come without being cautious enough, but I still need to do my Asr of that day and it will still be done, even if you have 5 minutes before Maghrib. But we should try our best to avoid praying at that time. It's makruh tahrim to pray at that time. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, حافظوا على الصلوات والصلاة الوسطى, that protect your prayers, especially the middle prayer. And that is, of course, as we know, is according to a lot of scholars, is the Asr prayer. So Asr is very, very important to make sure you pray it on time, is emphasized in this ayah here in Surah Baqarah. The time of Maghrib is from the point sunset until the disappearance of the red twilight, according to the position given for the legal verdict fatwa. Now, in any school legal system, right, there's so many opinions, right? So just like we understood now, Imam Muhammad and Abu Yusuf have an opinion, Imam Hanifa has another one, and same with Shafi'i school, you'll have, within the legal system there are disagreements. Just like, say for example, in the parliament before a ruling, or in the House of Lords before a ruling is verified and passed, there are so many debates, right? And even when the ruling is passed, there are still people that disagree with that opinion, right? Say for example, the whole concept of having bicycle lanes, what Mr. Boris Johnson done, right? Bicycle people love it, drivers don't. Even there might still be politicians who disagree with that opinion, but the fact that the verdict and the ruling has been passed, that means that's now become the official position of say for example the highway code or the rules and regulations of the country. So within legal systems you have difference of opinions, but what matters is what's the fatwa itself. For a follower, for the people that are following that legal system, we need to look at what the final says. So within the Hanafi school of law there are so many opinions. Okay, Imam Abu Hanifa might have one, Abu Yusuf might have another, Muhammad might have another, Zufur might have another, and so on and so forth. Then there might be scholars that came later and they have different opinions, they do not agree. But what counts at any given time is what's the fatwa at that time. Because that means that's the final version. That's what we follow. Khalas? So that's what, so mufta bihi is a phrase that we hear in fiqh. And in other madhab they say mu'tamad or rajih, the stronger opinion. But generally in the Hanafi legal system, we say the mufta bihi, what the fatwa is given upon. Okay, so here he's saying to you that the time of Maghrib is from the point the sun has set until the disappearance of the red twilight, according to the position given for legal verdict. Fatwa 186 will explain to you what that means. This opinion is the opinion of the two companions, Abu Yusuf and Muhammad, and as stated in many classical Hanafi works, including this text. The position of legal verdict fatwa for the Hanafi school. The opinion of Imam Abu Hanifa, however, is that the end of Maghrib time and hence the beginning of Isha occurs later, namely when the disappearance of the white twilight, with the disappearance of the white twilight after sunset. Here he's saying to you that it's after the red twilight. There's a difference, right? Red twilight comes a bit before and the white twilight comes a bit after. Khalas? So according to the fatwa of the madhab, or the one that we follow generally, Maghrib time finishes at that time. And therefore, more simply for us, Maghrib time finishes at 5:11. Without going to the details. This is all important for those people that are out there looking for or making the timetables, right? And there are people, we have here, alhamdulillah, the Masjid, the Hilal Committee, the London Hilal Committee, the committee of ulama, mashallah, who go out there and who observe the sun and the moon, and they compile the timetables for years to come. And this is a great work, and it takes a lot of efforts. And they do that for us to be able to just look at our phone on the Darul Ummah website, www.org.uk, and just say, Fajr starts what time? 6:23. And obviously that's based on studies. And there are obviously, we find that sometimes between the masajid here in the community, there are slight differences, but it's not significant. But again, it's based on studies. When it comes to studies, everything, is prone to disagreements, because you might have seen it such and such, and I may have seen it such, and so on and so forth. The time of Isha and Witr is from that point until basically from the disappearance of the red twilight right before Fajr until before Subh as-Sadiq. One may not pray Witr before Isha due to the condition of praying them in the correct order. So we need to pray Witr after the Isha itself. He however says in the footnote that if you pray forgetfully before Isha, or you prayed Witr, then you remember that your Isha was invalid, so you prayed your Isha after you Witr now, then in those two cases, when you forgetfully prayed it, or if you prayed it and then you had to repeat your Isha, it's still okay. But it's better for you to repeat it anyway. Khalas? The following times are recommended, mustahab, to pray. Okay? And 188 will explain to you what mustahab means. For Fajr, when twilight begins to appear. When light begins to appear. What does that mean? It doesn't mean the sun itself. It means, like we said, like when the car turns before the bend. Khalas? And if you go to, the books, and you find so many hikam behind it, and we spoke about some of these before, that, they're saying to you that instead of praying right at the beginning of the time, delay it by 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, because you're still in the middle of that time. And he'll explain to you what it means by isfar. On 189 it says to you, that is, it is recommended for men to delay Fajr until a time before sunrise, such that if one realized that his prayer was invalid, he would have enough time to perform ghusl if needed, and repeat the prayer at the same pace with which he performed it the first time. Meaning, yes, we should delay, even though if the Hanafi school, even though within the Hanafi legal system we're saying to delay a little bit, we're still saying that make sure there is enough time that if you needed to have a bath and pray your Fajr, there is still enough time. So maybe at least give it half an hour, 40 minutes before sunrise. Khalas? So it's around the middle of that Fajr time. And that's the mustahab time, the preferred time as far as this is concerned. For Zuhr in the summer, when the weather becomes cooler, and you can understand it's easier for you to walk to the masjid when it's a bit cooler, so delay it a little bit. So for example, in summertime, if the Dhuhr comes at 1 o'clock and it lasts up until 6 p.m. and it's really hot in Egypt or wherever, in a hot country, or even in the UK, you are allowed to delay a little bit. It's mustahab in fact. Khalas? For Asr to delay it until before the sun changes. What does it mean by the sun changes? It means that makruh time. 190 will tell you, that is such that one can look at its disc without harm. To delay the prayer to this point is deemed prohibitively disliked. Is makruh tahrimi. Okay, for you to delay your Asr up until those 20 minutes. So, for Asr to delay it until the sun, so to pray before that time. When the sun changes, it's makruh. But until, so before that time, it's mustahab for you to pray it. For Dhuhr in the winter, and for Maghrib, always to pray as soon as the time enters. In the winter, the Dhuhr time is very limited, and we can see that now, we can live that, we can understand that. So to pray Dhuhr as soon as the time has started is mustahab in the winter. And Maghrib all the time, as soon as the time starts, we should pray. And because of that reason, there is actually a confusion, because we put a lot of emphasis on praying Maghrib as soon as the time comes. Someone told me, I heard that the Maghrib time only lasts for about 20 minutes. It doesn't, it lasts for longer, it lasts probably about 45, 1 hour. Right, or maybe even longer than an hour, depending on the weather and the season. But it's preferred for you to pray as soon as the time comes. Khalas? In cloudy weather, to pray Asr and Isha as soon as the time in cloudy weather to pray Asr and Isha as soon as the time enters, while for the other prayers to delay them somewhat. In cloudy weather, so if it's cloudy outside, to pray Asr and Isha as soon as the time enters. Because we don't know, it would be a bit confusing, right? To avoid that. I think it's all quite commonsensical, or it's quite understandable why these are. And you can see, especially when, for example, Isfar, one of the wisdoms behind it is that when you go to the masjid, in villages where there is no street light, for them to go to the masjid when it's a bit brighter is easier, as opposed to, you know, trip and go over. I think I'm being, someone's playing a prank on me. Anyways, trying to, khalas. There are 3 times of the day in which any prayers that was obligatory before these times is rendered invalid if performed in these times. So there are 3 times which are makruh in the day. And we spoke a bit about it before. There are 3 times of the day in which any prayer that was obligatory before these times is rendered invalid if performed in these times. Okay, maybe that sentence is a bit of a... There are 3 times of the day in which any prayer that was obligatory before... Oh, sorry, it's me. There are 3 times of the day in which any prayer that was obligatory before these times is rendered invalid if performed in these times. Maybe the comma was required there. Number 1 is at sunrise, at midday, at sunset, except for Asr of that day. Khalas. Inshallah, maybe we can should we carry on, or should we stop here and carry on from here next lesson?
I think that's fine.
That's fine?
I think that sentence confused us.
Okay, so maybe we will start with the confusion next time with a bit more energy and maybe a fresher Costa coffee within us, inshallah. Fresher coffee in our stomachs. Tafadhal, please go ahead.
With your Salah, is it classed as a thing? Fard, as in like you have to do it.
It's not fard.
No, but as in
It's wajib. As far as the Hanafi legal system is concerned, it's wajib. Meaning, it's obligatory, okay?
Yeah.
Right? And it's not in the same... You still have to do it. You still have to repeat it if you miss it. It just means that when the way we find the authenticity of it, khalas, is not from the same source as the fara'id. Fara'id are from sources which are completely, you know, qat'i thubut and qat'i dilala, that they are qat'i, or, you know, infallible or impeccable in their origin and in their indication. Wajib doesn't meet those 2 conditions. So it may be the indication. So even though the hadith, indication of it may be clear cut, but the origin of it may not be 100% impeccable. So it may not be mutawatir, for example. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
But it means that it's very, very... Now, when it comes to witr, it's one of those prayers. Hanafis call it wajib. Other madhab may call it sunnah, but it's a very emphasized sunnah. Very, very emphasized sunnah. So much so that you should repeat it even if you miss it. Khalas? So if you speak to Shafi'i ulama as well, and alhamdulillah, we're blessed in that sense that we have a lot of colleagues that are from different madhahib, because obviously Azhar teaches all from madhahib, so we have Hanafi friends and Shafi'i friends and Maliki friends and Hanbali friends, and it's good to discuss all the time. It creates that brotherly love to show that, you know, we don't have to fight with each other just because we pray differently, khalas. And also it creates discussion, so it's beneficial in that sense. So even though in the Shafi'i or other madhahib they might call it sunnah, it's very emphasized, very, very emphasized. It's almost like a wajib. And they don't see wajib and fard to be different. Wajib is fard and fard is wajib. And that all goes back to how we look at evidences. Okay? And in the Hanafi legal system, we have a different way of looking at evidences than as compared to other madhahib. And every single madhab, in fact, has its own way of looking at evidences. And to bring the example closer, the way, say for example, the British legal system would establish its rulings may be different from how the French legal system establishes rulings. They might look at different factors and may be different from the American way of doing things, right? It's how you look at things and decide that this is a reason to make this ruling such and such. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you explain the start of it? Like I got the end of it,
No.
the start.
Okay. 6:23
No,
a.m.
like,
So basically, before so it's the middle of the night. There's no light at all. It's complete darkness. There is something called a fake dawn, and there's something called a true dawn. A fake dawn is basically a light that comes like that, from the sky downwards. You might not see any of that here, because the UK weather is it's not good for seeing these kind of things. But if you live in an open country, dry country, where there are no clouds, you're probably able to see these things. So the false dawn is basically a vertical light, but the true dawn is a horizontal light. What does that mean? It means that the massive, gigantic sun, you know, the Earth's spin on its axis is basically, or its axis is basically coming, turning, and the sun is there, okay, and it's turning, and it's about here. So now, because the sun is so powerful, some of that light, a white light, reaches all the way into the night. Does that make sense? Because the whole night is basically the time's absence, or the Earth's absence from the sun. So when the Earth is not facing towards the sun, it's called night. Khalas? But then when it's coming back around towards the sun, the bulb is very powerful, right? There is a white light in the horizon. That's called as-subh as-sadiq, the true dawn. That's when Fajr starts. And the time stays up until we actually start seeing a part of the sun. Khalas?
And you know, when does like Isha like exactly start?
Exactly start? It starts when there's complete darkness, generally. Okay, but of course, like we said, there are two opinions. He's saying that the preferred opinion, or the fatwa opinion, is when the red twilight, you know, after sunset, you can see if you go like on a tropical holiday, you know, you can see on the seaside there's a red twilight after the sunset. That's probably about 45 minutes, an hour. That's when Isha has. When that disappears, Isha has also disappeared. But then, of course, the other opinion says when the white, like as in complete, there is complete darkness. There is not even a shadow, or no shadow. There is not even a tiny bit of white light. Because again, it's the same example. The sun is disappearing, right? And as it's leaving, because it's like a round ball, and the Earth is also like a round ball, or like an oval shape, right? The light is everywhere. Okay? And after the twilight, there is also a bit of white light left as it completely disappears away from the sun, away from the Earth, or as the Earth spins completely away from the sun. So, but generally, Isha time is when it's completely dark. That's an easy way to understand. Okay?
So is that 3 degrees that it refers to, referring to the 3 degrees of white light coming into the... So as the sun...
Yes.
So there's 3 degrees.
Yeah, exactly. So even when it comes to the fake dawn, there is about a 15 minutes gap between the two. So it's again that same amount of time, or similar amount of time. Does that make sense? Because it's basically the light that just comes before the white light itself. Khalas? But generally, obviously, when it comes to Fajr, we've understood this from the Subh Sadiq. That's there. There's no difference of opinion there. But when it comes to Isha, pray it. You know what? And it's, again, Shaykh Usama Abdul Azim, our teacher, he prays Isha. Do you know what time? And to be on the safer side, because it's liked to pray Isha a bit later, when it's a bit darker. He prays Isha in his masjid. In all the other masajid, when they're praying at 7 o'clock, and I've seen this, when they're praying at Isha at 7 o'clock, he's praying at 10 o'clock. So what they do, because what they do is they pray Isha, they relax for a bit, and then they start Tahajjud, and then Fajr starts, and it's just very serious. It's interesting. If you guys ever go to Cairo, go to Imam Shafi'i's area, and look for Shaykh Usama Abdul Azim's masjid, and pay it a visit. It's one of those very old looking masajid, very old. It's, you know, if you go to, they actually still use like, you know, tanned cow skin as carpet. It looks quite scruffy. Maybe that's not a good thing, but it takes it back in time. But you know, the spirituality and the ibadah and the sincerity there is really beautiful. It's hard to find, you know, in other masajid. Khalas? Jazakumullah khair. Any other questions? Barakallahu feek. Hayakumullah. تقبل الله منا ومنكم سبحانك اللهم أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.